Is there any fighter pilot on board? The voice cracked through the speakers, shaking every soul on the Boeing 747. The words came with fear, heavy and trembling, as the storm outside pounded the plane. The wings groaned. Overhead bins rattled. People gasped and clutched their armrests. Children cried. Some prayed aloud. The co-pilot's voice carried on, more desperate this time. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain David Harris is unconscious. I cannot do this alone. If there is anyone here with combat flight experience, I need your help now. The plane dipped hard, throwing a cup of water into the air. It splashed against the ceiling and fell back down like rain. Passengers screamed. The aircraft shook again, and for a moment it felt like the whole world tilted sideways. In the middle rows, a woman stirred from sleep. Her name was Alicia Brown. She had been resting with her head against the window, calm even when others were restless. Now, she opened her eyes slowly, like someone waking from another life. Alicia was not dressed like a hero. She wore plain jeans, a simple blouse, and her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. To the eyes around her, she looked like any ordinary woman traveling alone. But Alicia had lived a life that few could imagine. She knew storms. She knew fear. She knew chaos. And she knew how to fly through them. But no one else knew that yet. At the front of the cabin, a tall man in an expensive jacket stood up. His name was Charles Miller. His wife, Laura, tugged on his sleeve and whispered, "Sit down, Charles." But he pulled his arm free. "I have been in private jets dozens of times," Charles shouted, his voice full of pride. "I know more than most about flying. Let me handle this." Some passengers looked relieved. Others looked doubtful. The flight attendant hurried to him, shaking her head. "Sir, we need someone with military training," she said firmly. Flying a private jet is not the same as controlling a Boeing in this kind of storm. Charles puffed out his chest. "I paid $15,000 for these first-class seats. Don't tell me what I can or cannot do. If anyone here is qualified, it is me." The plane jolted again, harder this time. People screamed. A baby wailed. The lights flickered. The sound of thunder rolled so close it felt like it was inside the cabin. Through it all, Alicia sat still, watching. She could see the fear on every face around her. She could hear the whispers, the prayers, the arguments. She noticed one thing. Nobody even thought to look at her. To them, she was just a black woman sitting in economy class. Invisible, ordinary, powerless. Alicia unbuckled her seatbelt quietly. She rose to her feet without drama, without raising her voice. But the way she moved, steady, calm, and firm, made some passengers turn to watch her. There was no panic in her eyes, no shaking in her hands, only control. She walked past Charles Miller, who stared at her with disbelief. Excuse me," Alicia said softly to the flight attendant. Her voice was calm, but it carried like a steady rope through chaos. "I am Colonel Alicia Brown, United States Air Force. I have more than 500 hours flying combat aircraft. I know how to fly through storms like this." The cabin fell into silence. Charles let out a sharp laugh, loud and bitter. "Her? You expect us to trust her?" He waved his hand at Alicia's plain clothes. "Look at her. She doesn't belong in a cockpit. She doesn't even belong in first class." An older woman whispered, "Is she serious?" Another man muttered, "She looks too young." Doubt passed from row to row like a cold wind. But Alicia didn't flinch. She didn't need to argue. She looked directly at the flight attendant, who hesitated, then nodded. Something in Alicia's steady eyes spoke louder than the storm outside. From the cockpit speaker, the young co-pilot's voice broke again. "Please, the captain is having seizures. I cannot hold this plane steady much longer." Alicia stepped forward. "Mark Stevens, she said firmly, calling him by name. "This is Colonel Brown. Tell me our altitude, speed, and wind conditions." There was a pause. Then Mark answered quickly, his voice trembling but more focused now. 38,000 feet, 450 knots, crosswinds at 120 kilometers an hour, gusts up to 160. Passengers stared at Alicia. Charles scoffed. "She memorized numbers off the internet. That doesn't make her a pilot." Alicia stood taller, her voice firm. She spoke without hesitation. "Emergency procedure for loss of pressurization at cruising altitude. Deploy oxygen masks immediately. Emergency descent to 10,000 feet. Angle not exceeding 15 degrees to prevent structural failure. Radio contact code 7700. She kept going, her words sharp and precise. Listing procedures only a trained combat pilot would know by heart. The storm roared outside, but inside the cabin, all you could hear was Alicia's calm, steady voice. Mark's voice returned through the intercom, stronger now. "Ma'am, the cockpit is yours." Charles sputtered. "No! This is madness. We can't trust her." Alicia turned to him, her face calm, her tone even. "Mr. Miller, there are three kinds of pilots. Those who fly when it is easy, those who fly when it is hard, and those who fly when it is impossible." The plane dropped suddenly, a violent lurch that sent passengers screaming again. Drinks flew. A suitcase fell from the overhead bin. People grabbed each other for safety. Alicia did not even sway. She stood firm, balanced, like the storm itself bowed to her. She looked back at Charles one last time. "I have flown through war zones with engines destroyed and missiles in the air. I brought my entire squadron home. Now I will bring this plane home too." Without waiting for permission, Alicia turned and walked toward the cockpit door. The passengers watched her, silent, torn between fear and awe. Charles sat down slowly, his face pale. For the first time, his confidence cracked. Alicia reached the cockpit door. Her hand rested on the handle. She spoke so everyone could hear her. "Stay calm. Buckle your belts. Do not move. I will take it from here." The lock clicked. The door opened, and Alicia Brown stepped inside. The cockpit smelled of sweat, metal, and panic. Warning alarms blinked across the panels in red and amber. Rain slapped hard against the windows, streaking like sharp nails across the glass. Lightning cracked in the distance, bright white flashes that lit up the entire cabin for a breath before plunging it back into storm dark. Captain David Harris sat slumped in his chair. His head lolled against the side, foam at the corner of his mouth. His chest rose and fell in uneven jerks. His hands trembled. His body shook with seizures. Beside him, Mark Stevens, the young co-pilot, was pale and drenched in sweat. His fingers hovered above the controls, stiff and unsure. His eyes darted from one warning light to another, as if the plane itself was scolding him. When Alicia Brown entered, Mark almost sagged in relief. "Ma'am," he said, his voice breaking. I've never flown through anything like this. The captain's down. I don't know what to do." Alicia touched his shoulder, firm but steady. "You are not alone," she said. "You will follow my lead." She leaned over Captain Harris, checking his pulse, his breathing, his pupils. Her motions were quick, practiced, without wasted movement. "He's in seizure," she muttered. "We have minutes before cardiac arrest if this doesn't stop." Mark swallowed. Do you know medicine too?" 10 years flying rescue missions in combat zones," Alicia replied, already tilting the captain's head and loosening his collar. "When the medic is gone and a soldier is bleeding out, you learn." She pulled a small oxygen mask from above and secured it over Harris's mouth. The hiss of air filled the silence between thunderclaps. The cockpit door opened slightly. A flight attendant peeked in. Behind her stood Dr. Emily Carter, a passenger from first class, her white coat folded neatly over her arm. "I'm a neurosurgeon," she said. I can monitor him. Alicia nodded sharply. Doctor, please, keep his airway clear. Track his vitals. If he goes into arrest, you start compressions until we're on the ground. Dr. Carter moved in without hesitation, her hands already assessing the captain. The attendant closed the door behind them, muffling the sound of passengers' panic. Alicia slid into the left seat, the captain's chair, her hands moving with quiet certainty over the controls. The aircraft shuddered as crosswinds slapped its sides. Mark gripped his yoke like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Altitude? Alicia asked. 38,000. Dropping. Mark stammered. Speed? Speed? 450 knots. Crosswinds? And 120 steady. Gusts 160. Good. You're my eyes. You call every number out loud. Every 30 seconds. Mark nodded. His breathing slowed. Her calmness spread like a hand pressed against his racing heart. The radio crackled. This is Lincoln Air Force Base. Identify yourself. Alicia pressed the button. This is Colonel Alicia Brown, Air Force. Call sign Spectre. Taking command of civilian Boeing 7047. Flight emergency. Captain incapacitated. Requesting immediate weather support and emergency landing coordinates. There was a stunned pause. Then a voice replied, sharp and urgent. Spectre? This is Commander Robert Hayes. We confirm identity. You disappeared from radar 20 minutes ago. We've been looking for you. The name spread through the cockpit like fire. Mark blinked. Dr. Carter looked up from her patient. Even she knew the stories. Spectre, the legend who had flown through sandstorms with engines shot out. The pilot who had guided damaged aircraft home when manuals said it was impossible. Alicia didn't bask in it. She had no time. Commander Hayes, she said, we are in the center of a Category 5 storm. Crosswinds 160. Airports closing. I need options now. Spectre, copy, Hayes answered. Jefferson International is shutting down. Roosevelt Air Force Base is still open. Foam trucks on standby. Runway cleared. Send me coordinates, Alicia replied. Mark stared at her. Mama Roosevelt is over 200 miles south. Can we make it? Alicia glanced at the fuel gauge. The numbers rolled like dice. She made a fast calculation in her head. We will make it, she said flatly. We don't have a choice. The plane lurched again, rolling so far right that Mark cried out and grabbed for balance. Dr. Carter clutched the seat to keep steady. The captain moaned. Alicia corrected with small, firm motions, steadying the giant machine like she was taming a wild horse. Her knuckles didn't whiten. Her breath didn't quicken. She was stone in the storm. Outside, passengers gripped their seats. Charles Miller was still muttering, "This is suicide. She'll kill us all. They're letting a woman with no proof touch the controls." His voice was bitter, but quieter now. Doubt gnawed at him. Laura put her hand on his arm and whispered, "Stop, Charles. Just stop." Alicia heard none of it. Her mind was focused only on wind, lift, drag, numbers. "Mark," she said, "take communications with air traffic. Keep Hayes updated every 30 seconds. I need both hands here." "Oh, yes, ma'am." His voice was stronger now. Lightning flared again, so close it painted the cockpit in white. The plane shook like it would rip apart. Warning alarms beeped in chorus. "Spectre." Hayes's voice came again over the radio, louder this time. "Weather is worsening faster than expected. Winds 180, hail the size of baseballs. You are the only aircraft still in the air. Every other has landed or diverted." Mark's hand froze on the comms. He looked at Alicia, waiting for panic. But she did not panic. She adjusted the controls, then said, "Then we don't land like every other pilot. We land like only I can." Mark blinked. "Ma'am? What are you planning?" Alicia's lips thinned, almost a smile, but not quite. "Controlled spiral descent. Through the eye of the storm. It has never been done in a 747. Mark's throat went dry. That's impossible. Her eyes stayed on the gauges, calm and sharp. I've made a career out of impossible. The cockpit was silent, except for the storm and the alarms. Dr. Carter looked at her, eyes wide. You really think you can pull that off? Alicia glanced at Captain Harris, still twitching under oxygen. I don't think. I know, and it's our only chance. Outside the cockpit, passengers sat in tense quiet. Some held hands. Some prayed. Some stared at the door, waiting for news. And Charles Miller, the man who had mocked her, now sat pale and still, unable to laugh. Alicia's hands pressed the yoke, feeling every tremor of the storm. She closed her eyes for a breath, seeing in her mind not just the panels but the sky itself, the layers of wind, the tunnels of calm, the patterns only a veteran of storms could read. She opened them again. Mark, are you with me? Mark swallowed, then nodded. Yes, Colonel, all the way. Alicia set her jaw. Then, hold on. The real fight begins now. The plane dipped into its first spiral, the nose cutting into the storm's wall. The engines roared. Passengers screamed. Drinks flew. And in the cockpit, Alicia Brown pulled the 747 into a maneuver no one believed possible. The roar of the engines filled every corner of the aircraft. The 747 tilted hard, its nose dipping into the spiral Alicia Brown had chosen. Passengers screamed as gravity shifted, pulling their bodies sideways in their seats. Drinks, bags, and papers flew across the cabin. A baby's cry pierced through the storm's thunder. "Dear God, we're falling!" someone shouted. In first class, Charles Miller clutched both armrests, his knuckles pale. His wife Laura leaned into him, whispering prayers he had not heard her say in years. Sweat rolled down his temple. He wanted to speak, to curse the woman in the cockpit, but his mouth was dry. Deep inside, fear was mixing with something worse, the sting of shame. At the front, the cockpit trembled with sound and light. Warning alarms blinked and buzzed in every color. The yoke shook under Alicia's steady hands. Her eyes moved quickly across gauges, then out to the storm. Her mind was painting a picture, a map only she could see, the spiral of wind, the tunnels of calmer air hidden inside chaos. Vertical speed? She asked. Descending 4,000 feet per minute, Mark Stevens answered, his voice steadier than before. He was sweating, but his tone carried trust now, not panic. Fuel? Good for 2 more hours. Crosswinds? 170 and rising. Keep talking, Alicia said. As long as you call numbers, we stay alive. Behind them, Dr. Emily Carter pressed her stethoscope to Captain David Harris's chest. His breathing was shallow, rattling, but steadier under oxygen. She looked up. Colonel, his pulse is weak. If this descent is too sharp, it could trigger cardiac arrest. Alicia did not look away from the storm. Doctor, keep him stable. Do whatever you must. I'll get us down before we lose him. Dr. Carter nodded, gripping the captain's hand as if holding him to life. The radio cracked. Spectre, this is General Linda Scott at Liberty Defense Headquarters. We have eyes on your descent. Are you truly attempting a controlled spiral in a 747? I confirmed, Alicia replied calmly. Static hissed. Then the general's voice again. Spectre, that maneuver has never been tried in commercial aviation. If you miscalculate, I don't miscalculate, Alicia said, firm. Not when lives are in my hands. Mark blinked, glancing at her. The authority in her tone wasn't pride. It was truth. The spiral deepened. The plane shook, rattling like a can in the wind. Overhead compartments groaned. Passengers clung to their belts. Some cried out apologies, confessions, prayers. Charles Miller finally broke his silence. We're doomed, he shouted to anyone who would listen. This woman will kill us. She's not qualified. A young man across the aisle snapped at him. Shut up! Can't you see she's the only one holding this together? Others nodded. Murmurs rose, not against Alicia, but against Charles. His words no longer carried weight. He shrank into his seat, trembling. Back in the cockpit, Mark read numbers like a lifeline. Altitude 32,000. Vertical speed steady. Crosswinds 180. Good, Alicia said. Her grip tightened. Brace for turbulence. The plane jolted, a violent slam that sent Mark's head against the headrest. Lightning flashed again, lighting Alicia's face in stark white. Her expression didn't change. Calm. Focused. Her jaw set like stone. For a moment, the plane leveled inside a pocket of calmer air. The passengers breathed out shaky sighs. But Alicia knew it was only the eye before the next wall. "Mark," she said, "remind me of the coordinates for Roosevelt Air Force Base." Mark rattled them off. Alicia's eyes flicked to the compass, then back outside. She guided the nose carefully, adjusting for wind, nudging the controls with the precision of a surgeon. The radio lit again. "Spectre, this is Commander Hayes. All civilian aircraft have cleared airspace. You are the only flight left in the storm. Entire East Coast is watching you on radar." Mark looked at Alicia. "The whole world's watching." "Then let them," she said softly. "They will see what a black woman can do when she is trusted with the sky." Dr. Carter glanced at her, startled by the quiet strength in her words. The spiral tightened. The engines roared louder. Gravity pulled at every muscle. Passengers groaned as their stomachs twisted. An elderly woman fainted. A flight attendant rushed to fan her and press a mask over her face. Children wailed louder. Charles sat frozen, his earlier arrogance burned out, replaced by fear. His wife Laura turned to him and whispered, "That woman is saving us, Charles. Look at her. Remember this." In the cockpit, the alarm screamed again. Ice was forming on the wings. The storm grew darker, angrier. "Mark, wing anti-ice on now," Alicia ordered. "Yes, ma'am." He flicked switches with trembling hands. The plane jolted again, throwing Dr. Carter sideways. She steadied herself, checking the captain. "His pulse is dropping," she cried. Alicia's eyes narrowed. She had no time to split between saving the plane and saving one man. But she trusted the doctor. "Keep him alive," she said. "I'll keep the rest alive." The storm roared louder, almost like it wanted to swallow them whole. The spiral tightened more. Alicia's arms strained against the yoke, but her movements stayed precise, steady, controlled. "Altitude 25,000, Mark reported. His voice shook but carried awe now, not fear. "Ma'am, we're descending, and it's working." Alicia didn't answer. Her focus was absolute. The radio buzzed again. "Spectre, this is General Scott. You are now clear priority for emergency landing at Roosevelt. Ambulances and fire crews ready. Runway is coated in foam. All lights active." Alicia nodded once. "Copy. We'll be there." The storm outside flared again, lightning so bright it blinded the cockpit for half a second. The thunder followed, a deafening crack that rattled every panel. Mark shielded his face. "We can't hold this much longer." "Yes, we can," Alicia said, her voice sharp as steel. "Because we must." The spiral steadied. The 747 sliced through the wall of the storm, shaking but holding. Rain pounded the windows. Hail cracked against the fuselage. But the nose stayed firm on the path Alicia had chosen. Down below, for the first time, faint city lights flickered through the storm's veil. Alicia's lips tightened. "There," she whispered. Mark followed her gaze. His chest loosened. "We're breaking through. But before relief could settle, the radio exploded with new static. Commander Hayes' voice came in, tense and sharp. "Spectre, be advised, new storm cells forming directly over Roosevelt. Winds shifting. You may not make runway in time. Advise immediate alternate. Mark's face drained. Another storm? Now? Alicia's eyes stayed on the faint runway lights below, her voice calm but low. Then we don't have minutes to think. We have seconds. The cabin shook again, harder than before. Passengers screamed, clutching seats, praying. And Alicia Brown's steady voice cut through it all. Mark, hold firm. Doctor, keep the captain alive. I'll get us on the ground, no matter what it takes. The plane dropped into fresh turbulence, engines straining, the storm swelling around them once more. The storm rose again, angry and merciless. The 747 shuddered, thrown side to side as if the sky itself was trying to rip it apart. Lights in the cabin flickered. People screamed, some clinging to strangers, others praying louder than before. In the cockpit, Mark Stevens shouted over the alarms. Spectre, Roosevelt's runway is closing under the new storm cell. We won't make it in time. Alicia Brown's hands were steady on the yoke. Her eyes darted between instruments and the storm outside. Her voice was calm, but there was no softness in it. Then we make a path. There's always a way through. The radio crackled. Commander Hayes called in, his tone urgent. Spectre, you are flying through an active wall. Winds at 190. Hail reported on final approach. Advise abort no abort. Alicia cut him off. 300 lives depend on me. We're going down. Mark's jaw clenched. Sweat rolled down his face. Tell me what to do. You're my second set of eyes, Alicia said. Call every number. Do not stop. If you freeze, we die. Mark nodded, forcing air into his lungs. Altitude, 18,000. Descent steady. Airspeed, 420. Crosswinds, 185. Alicia guided the aircraft lower, easing the spiral into a straight line. The runway lights of Roosevelt Air Force Base glimmered faintly ahead, blurred by sheets of rain. The storm roared louder. Behind them, Dr. Emily Carter pressed hard against Captain David Harris's chest, counting compressions. Sweat streaked her brow. His heart is failing, she gasped. Alicia didn't look back. Keep him alive, doctor. I'll get you both on the ground. The cockpit door rattled as a flight attendant peeked in. Passengers are panicking. Some say we're crashing. Tell them this, Alicia ordered, never turning from the yoke. Tell them Alicia Brown is flying this plane, and I don't lose people. The attendant's eyes widened. Then she nodded and hurried back to the cabin. Passengers clung to her words like a lifeline. Even those who doubted her sat frozen, eyes fixed on the cockpit door. But Charles Miller couldn't stop shaking his head. His voice was hoarse now, broken. She can't do this. Nobody can. We're all dead. His wife Laura turned to him, her voice cold as steel. The only person keeping us alive is the one you mocked. Sit down and watch what real strength looks like. Charles had no reply. For the first time in his life, he felt smaller than the storm. Back in the cockpit, Alicia's voice was a steady rhythm. Flaps 20. Gear down. Mark obeyed, his hands trembling but certain. Flaps set. Gear down. Altitude 10,000, Alicia called. 10,000. Mark echoed. Speed 350. Crosswinds 190. Nose steady. Alicia said. The plane rocked violently, buffeted by gusts that wanted to push it off course. Rain hammered the windshield like bullets. Lightning split the sky, revealing the wet glint of the runway in the distance. Mark's voice cracked. We're coming in too fast. Oh, trust me, Alicia said, her grip unshaken. The storm wants us down too fast. I'll make it listen. She pulled gently, adjusting pitch, countering crosswinds with surgical precision. The 747 responded, trembling but obedient. The base tower came alive over the radio. Spectre, runway foamed and cleared. Fire crews ready, all lights active. You are go for landing. Copy, Alicia replied. The storm screamed. The cabin shook. Passengers clutched one another. Dr. Carter pressed oxygen hard against the captain's mouth, whispering, "Stay with us." "Altitude 5,000, Mark shouted. 5,000, Alicia repeated. "Speed 300, crosswind steady 190. Hold, Alicia muttered. Hold. The runway grew larger in the windshield. Rain blurred it, lightning flashing around its edges. The storm threw one last violent shove, pushing the plane sideways. The cabin erupted in screams. Correcting, Alicia said calmly. Her hands shifted the yoke, her feet pressed the rudder pedals with sharp precision. The aircraft straightened. The runway lined up dead center. Altitude 1,000. Mark called, his voice rising. 1,000. Alicia echoed. Eyes on the lights. Hold. The wheels dropped lower. The engines roared, straining against wind and gravity. Alicia's arms flexed, her jaw set. Altitude 500. NCC 500. The plane jolted. The left wing dipped, then recovered. Alicia adjusted again, her voice steady as stone. "Stay with me, girl," she whispered to the aircraft. "You've got one more fight in you." "AI 200!" Mark cried. 200. Hold. The runway lights rushed up to meet them. 50 feet. Alicia pulled gently, easing the nose up. The wheels slammed into the foam-coated runway. The plane bounced once, then crashed down again, metal screeching against asphalt. The reverse thrusters roared. The aircraft shuddered as it slowed. Passengers screamed again, this time not in terror, but in shock that they were still alive. Speed, 150. 150. The plane rolled, shaking, then finally slowed to a crawl. Fire trucks lined the runway. Ambulances rushed forward. Alicia exhaled for the first time. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said over the intercom, her voice steady. "Welcome to Roosevelt Air Force Base." The cabin erupted in cheers, cries, and sobs. Strangers hugged strangers. Some fell to their knees in prayer. But Charles Miller sat in silence, staring at the floor. His pride had shattered, his words burned away by the truth. He had mocked the woman who saved his life. Months later, the world had not forgotten that storm. At Liberty Defense Headquarters, Alicia Brown stood in full uniform as she was promoted to Brigadier General, the youngest black woman in history to hold the rank. Cameras flashed. The Secretary of Defense himself pinned the stars on her shoulders. She did not just save 300 lives, he said. She redefined what courage looks like. At Franklin Air Academy, Alicia spoke to cadets. One asked, "General, how do you deal with people who doubt you?" She smiled faintly. "Let them doubt. While they waste their energy underestimating you, you spend yours becoming unforgettable." Meanwhile, Charles Miller's face was everywhere for the wrong reason. Passengers' phone videos of his prejudice went viral, viewed by millions. His business empire crumbled. His wife Laura divorced him. His daughter Sophie asked one day, "Daddy, why do people call you the man who was wrong?" Charles had no answer. He worked now at Maple Motors, selling used cars, taking the bus each morning. And every morning, he passed through Riverdale City Square, where a giant billboard showed Alicia in uniform with the words, "Leadership has no color, it has character." One afternoon, at Riverbend Airport, Charles saw her again. Alicia was walking with aides, her stars shining on her shoulders. He stepped forward, voice small. "General Brown, I want to apologize." Alicia studied him for a moment. Then she said softly, "Mr. Miller, you gave me a gift that day." He frowned. "A gift? You reminded me why I do what I do. Every barrier I break, every life I save, every cadet I train. People like you are why I refuse to stop." And with that, she walked on, leaving him standing alone, swallowed by the weight of his own prejudice. Alicia Brown's revenge was not in his ruin. It was in her legacy, a legacy so bright that it made his hate irrelevant. Dear viewers, Alicia Brown was once just another face in the crowd, doubted and dismissed because of her color and her seat on that plane. But when the storm came, she proved that true strength is not measured by appearance, money, or pride. It is measured by courage, skill, and heart. Charles Miller had power, wealth, and arrogance, yet none of it could save him when life hung on the edge. The woman he mocked not only saved him, but also became a symbol of hope for millions. His fall was not her victory. Her true victory was rising so high that his prejudice could never touch her again. Remember this. Never judge a person by how they look, where they sit, or what they wear. Greatness has no color. Leadership has no class. And courage can come from the most unexpected places. If this story touched your heart, please support our work. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share where you're watching from in the comments. Your support helps us bring more true, powerful, and unforgettable stories to light.